Right before I started my line, I was just pregnant with my third child. I felt like suddenly I couldn't run away from the need that I had as a third-time mother. And I felt like the industry was quite stagnant. You know, we don't really want to buy maternity clothing. Okay, I buy, but then it's not me. When I went through pregnancy 1 and 2, I'm like, okay, I deal with what I have. You know, whatever that's in my wardrobe that can stretch, I stretch it all the way to pregnancy and breastfeeding. They were literally tearing at the seams. And I was like, okay, it's time for me to go and buy clothes out there. And I asked myself if I was going to be ready to invest in all these clothing for myself for this pregnancy and breastfeeding and beyond, then should I just invest in samples? It was a clear signal that there was a market for this, there was a demand for it. The market of maternity or women with children are a little bit smaller. Yeah, but I think for me, the beginning was always about solving my personal problem. And if I could solve that personal problem, many other women would have this problem as well. And it's time for us to also solve that for them.
Welcome back to day 2 of the TSD Business Show, reporting live here at FL Asia 2025. We're on the last panel for today and we're covering a very interesting topic, which is retailing to minority communities, specifically in fashion. Now, this is not often talked about, and to be honest, it's a pretty difficult industry to be in, knowing the challenges facing this segment. So we're going to talk to 2 fashion brand owners as well as Lily from the Singapore Fashion Council. And we're going to begin with you. So if you could introduce yourself to the audience and tell us about the work that you do.
Of course. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, everyone, for having us. I'm Lily. I'm the commercial director at the Singapore Fashion Council, and we run an exciting multi-label store called Doors, and it's located at Design Orchard. And we celebrate local brands, we support local brands, and the 2 ladies beside me are 2 of the brands that we have in store. So I'm really excited that they could join me. I asked, would you be a part of this with me? And they gladly said yes.
So my name is Jillian and I'm the founder of Olive Basics. So we are called a functional women's wear label, and I will tell you a bit more about that later, why we call it functional.
Hi, I'm Akila Zailan. I'm a fashion entrepreneur and designer, sorry. So I advocate for the conservation of heritage, as well as slow fashion, sustainable fashion, and fairness in the garment supply chain. So that's a lot, so we'll get into that later.
We'll cover that during this panel because it's something that is not as often seen in today's scene. But before that, Lily,
yes,
we want to ask you, what sparked your decision to go into fashion and led you to champion these local brands?
Well, I'll first say that it didn't start with me. I'm happy to jump on this exciting bandwagon, this exciting train that's been, rolling through the years, and, being part of a community of people that has brought together a platform like Design Orchard, or now known as Doors, to champion local brand owners. It's not without difficulty, but we're supported by not just, shoppers at large, by government agencies, but with the purpose of wanting to provide that platform, because Orchard Road's an expensive street, and, not everybody has the means to set up their own store. We celebrate those that do, but we're here to help those that don't.
Mm-hmm. And it's an important work, because if you guys are not championing it, then a lot of these brands may not be able to see the next month or the next year. And if they don't survive, then the art of Singapore fashion will just be lost over time.
The brand owners that they work with, they are the heart and soul of the brands, and a lot of them are so far more advanced in e-commerce, in TikTok shop, and, connecting with their audiences in a way that, a lot of brands have never done before. And that's through the stories that they bring. I think where Doors comes in a very important way is to provide that physical touch point So a lot of brand owners, they are connected through social media, the messaging. A lot of them put out content or are active in their own voice, and having that physical presence, connecting with customers in Orchard, locals, expats, or tourists, provides another avenue. I hope, and maybe you guys can share later on helping them kind of expand what it means to retail in Singapore. So not just digital, but also the physical environment.
Yeah. Jillian and Kayla, we want to hear your story. So Jillian, maybe we can start with you. What were you doing before you started your line, and what made you go down this route?
Right before I started my line, I was just pregnant with my third child. But in my whole career, I do marketing, branding, PR, in-house and agency. So I think that was the whole journey that equipped me with the skills to then say like, let's jump on this boat. But most importantly, it was really at the third pregnancy, I felt like suddenly I couldn't run away from the need that I had as a third-time mother. So I've already had 2 prior pregnancies and kids, and I felt like the industry was quite stagnant. And I think if many women are watching this, they would agree to say that we don't really want to buy maternity clothing. Okay, I buy, but then it's not me. So I think for me, when I went through pregnancy 1 and 2, I'm like, okay, I deal with what I have, whatever that's in my wardrobe that can stretch, I stretch it all the way to pregnancy and breastfeeding. But then by the time I had my third child, those dresses that lasted, they were literally tearing at the seams. And I was like, okay, it's time for me to go and buy clothes out there. And that really gave me the very clear signal that there was still that gap. And I asked myself if I was going to be ready to invest in all these clothing for myself for this pregnancy and breastfeeding and beyond, then should I just invest in sample? And my goal was literally to invest and try making 2 or 3 samples that I was happy with before I gave birth. And if I could hit that goal, then I would start Olive Basics.
Right. So when you started, then I can imagine the friends around you were also like, hey, I also need something like that. So that was how it was.
And some people were like saying, where were you when I was pregnant, And I think for me, it was a clear signal that there was a market for this. There was a demand for it. But I guess a lot of people also, I can understand that it's not something that is very scary to step into because the market of maternity or women with children are a little bit smaller. Yeah, but I think for me, the beginning was always about solving my personal problem. And if I could solve that personal problem, many other women would have this problem as well. And it's time for us to also solve that for them.
Mm-hmm. I think in general as well, the fashion market is always very difficult. There's a lot of big brands that you have to fight with. So when you choose to go niche and retail to minority communities, smaller groups, the challenges are even harder. So you chose the functional female moms route. Akila, you chose even more niche. Batik, heritage, low fashion. Tell us more about what sparked off that decision and your journey through it.
So I always find that Studio Gypsy is a very serendipitous journey for me. It actually started in 2013 alongside my full-time jobs in retail operations and marketing for local brands. So I was doing this for books, for jewelry, lifestyle, fashion. And Studio Gypsy was this baby on the side, where it was my platform to explore my identity and unpack my identity. When you are in your 20s, you just graduated. So you are thinking about, where's my career going to go? What is the mark I want to leave in the world, right? And somehow my passion lied in batik. And batik is a textile of my ancestors. Yes, I'm of Javanese ancestry. So I felt very close to like the textile. And actually because we are on the financial coconut, so this is a story that I remember my father shared a story with me about batik and my late grandma. So once upon a time, in a little estate in Acacia Crescent, my grandma I had no money to bring her eldest daughter to the doctor. So what she did was to pawn her very prized handcrafted batik to get some money to be able to pay for the clinic fees. And that story really impacted me for a long time. It's a story that he repeats, of course, as fathers do. And I think that also piqued my curiosity, like, oh, what is this textile? How come it's so valuable? And how come by the time I was rediscovering batik, its value isn't the same as before? And that's how, I went into heritage, and like I traveled and met artisans and got to know the story of batik. So from there, I started developing and creating batik accessories for a long time. So there were pauses in between, but we managed to grow like a loyal following online and on our mailing list. And then in 2019, I decided to take the plunge and do it full time. While also expanding into women's wear.
Right. For both of you, what do you think is the hardest part about building a local brand that isn't quite international?
I think for me, the hardest part is visibility. I think we all agree that Singapore is small, but Singapore is strong, right? So I think while we try and tackle that in terms of the scale and the size, it's with whatever we have to be thankful for the loyal following that we have, and to really go deep and really understand this, I would say, founding customers that we have in this 1.5 years that we've been around. Because the moment we really get to the core of solving these women's problems, then basically these women, they are also modern women. And I think for us, then stepping out there and also giving our work to more people in maybe other countries would then also be better, because then our product is more tested and more refined than maybe at the beginning. Yeah, we only started with 2 things at the beginning, and that was intentional because we don't want to grow a brand fast. We really take a lot of thought in every single piece. So that dress and this cardigan now is still around 1.5 years later in different colors and with great improvement as well. So everything that we do, even though we understand that the market is small, we try and make sure that it really can cater to a large part of that market. So even though I shared with you, we focused a lot on moms at the beginning, which was that season of my life as well. The brand has grown with me as well. So now when my kids are a little bit older, I've graduated from the breastfeeding era, I also started to see that a lot of my customers also had that journey. And for us to listen in on that and to then say, let's create clothes that would journey with them in another season, that helped us to expand the entire range as well. Yeah, so I think we tackle the small size and the hardness to scale with going deep.
Akila, what about you? So I could hear from your story, you're very much driven by the want and desire to carry on this heritage, pass on the stories to the next generation so that it doesn't get lost. But I can imagine that comes with a lot of challenges financially and on a day-to-day basis too, especially since you took the plunge to do it full time. When you look at the other fashion brands that have gone international, and there are very few because Singapore, unfortunately, not a lot, right? And you're in this space whereby you're trying to make it bigger locally, but you're not at that stage to go truly international or ASEAN, APAC yet. What do you think is the hardest but yet the most rewarding part of the journey for you?
The hardest and most rewarding part, I think it is actually connecting at a deeper level with our customers. I am very aware that stereogypsy is not something that you just pick up from like the rack and then you straight away go to a counter and make payment for it, because the price point is different, right? So by that same token, it means that we are connecting with women who really truly understand the ethos of the brand, because they also hold those same values within themselves. And it's very inspiring to be connected with these women. And from there, it's like what Jillian said, like, you will listen to your customers and you create products, like, and meet them where they are. I mean, of course, as a designer, I am always thinking about elevating our designs and silhouettes, but it is also to balance that with the needs of like our customers. So I would say that that's the most like gratifying part about working in a small brand, that to be able to be on the ground and have that connection with customers.
Right. Lily, I'm gonna turn the attention back to you because we want to understand a bit more. You work a lot with these local designers in trying to elevate them to the next level to help them bridge the gap. But what do you see, aside from what you said, whereby they might be good at what they do, great at designing, but not familiar with things like TikTok and all the other stuff, right? What gaps do you see in the current ecosystem, and how do you see your work as bridging that gap?
That's a really good question. And echoing what Jillian had said about visibility, I think with what Singapore Fashion Council is doing and what DOORS is doing is to help broaden that visibility gap. Not close that visibility gap. I mean, so to create awareness, we're thankful we're in a location that's very visible. It's one of the few street to store locations in Orchard Road. So what that means is that their brands and their products, when they are in our windows or when they are in the store, it gets connected to audiences really fast. And helping with growing the awareness of the brands, and not just individual brands specifically, but just more of what we do in terms of, we say we support local, right, as a community, but how are we truly supporting local? Now, are we buying local brands? Are we supporting local businesses? And I think we do have ways to go about that, and all of us are consumers. But at the heart of it all is, if you are sincere about shopping local brands and local designers, there's so many of them that are so talented, and there are a lot more in the market. They're just not yet come to the front or are made visible. So what we do at DOORS is really try to do that as much as possible. We are still confined. It's a big store, but we are still confined by space. And we have 86 of them in store right now, which we're excited to have. And for us to be able to project them out there to the market, we welcome shoppers daily, 7 days a week. That's the role that Singapore Fashion Council plays, into the retail team and we want to champion them, we want to showcase them, connect them with audiences outside Singapore and in Singapore and across physical and digital platforms also. And with that awareness comes community building. It comes, realizing that, hey, a lot of women actually, women, men, adults and kids, they resonate with the stories that they tell. The gap is, how can we activate the shopper audience into wanting to discover the brands, being open to discover the brands? Yeah. And at DOORS, the opportunity for us is we're not working with a production manager. We're not working with, somebody within a hierarchy of team. We are working directly with the founders themselves. And that's great about working with independent brands, because if they come to us and say, hey, we have this idea, I want to do an event, can I use the space for this? Akila's been on the floor and done media interviews. And both of them were also part of a very exciting inclusive runway show called Fashion for All at the store. So they're there to hop on whatever that we want to do, and then we're here to also provide the opportunities to do so. So it's a two-way street, and I think we have a lot of things that we can work on together to help drive that forward. So the gap, I would say, is, how can we resonate better with the shopper audience and get them on board as well?
Right. Well, this next question is going to go for all three of you, but how do you think Singapore fashion can stand out globally? What makes us unique?
I think for me, what I resonate with or draw the similarity with Singapore and global is that we are a very global people as Singaporeans. We travel a lot. We are we're out there a lot, and many people also come to Singapore a lot. So then I think for local brands, for us, that idea, at least even for Olive Basics, is that when we go out there with our designs, that it is for the modern and global woman. Yeah, and it's easy to travel in, it's easy to transition in, and it gives you a fuss-free time so that you can focus on the things that matter, like relationships, like work and people. And I think that's one way that for me, when I bring that down into the brand as a Singaporean brand, how can we then make a mark globally, and to be prepared for the global stage? I think for us, if we know that we can solve problems that are universal, then we are ready to represent Singapore in the wider stage.
Akila, what about yourself?
It's a question that I've mulled on for like a very long time. Also because I was working with local brands as well, so there was always that question like on our minds, right, as a team. But definitely there's that issue of like scaling. So you're a small business, like how is scaling going to look like? For Studio Gypsy in particular, we are handcrafted from start to finish. Like the batik is crafted by hand, washed by hand, dyed by hand, and then the tailoring, it's made by hands as well, right? And I think for heritage fashion in general, so if we look at the traditional wear of people in Southeast Asia, I think that does have currency on the international fashion stage, to be able to infuse traditional silhouettes with like a more modern take for today's women or for today's wearers, right? So actually one of our most loved pieces at Studio Gypsy is a short-sleeved kebaya. So because it's short-sleeved and it has like cute little ribbons at the front, so at one look you don't know that it's a kebaya until you wear it with a sarong. Then you're like, oh yeah, that's the silhouette. So it's the kebaya. But you can also, our customers are also able to wear it, for work, for play, for leisure, with like jeans, like shorts, skirts, up to them. And I think the opportunity for heritage fashion specifically is in that, to make it wearable in the everyday, right? And I think Southeast Asian traditional wear is already very iconic. Yeah, so to bring it on the international stage would be really, really interesting.
I agree. I had a D&D once where the theme was actually batik.
Okay.
So we went to, I forgot the name of that shopping mall. It's a very old one with a lot of the local owners and then batik pieces. But the challenge was that it was not very wearable. So after the event, it's just been a white elephant. And we want to wear it again, but there hasn't been another D&D or another event that is batik
Or like
theme
a
for
wedding
us.
or something.
Yeah, correct. So there's no chance. Whereas if there's a way to infuse, so like I'm Chinese, so one thing that I quite like is I like the chi pao details because I feel it's very pretty and it's also cultural. But I don't like wearing a chi pao.
Yes, of
Right,
course.
We all hate it. Like, so, But when I look at some international brands and how they've made it more wearable, such as it's just a top, but they take that chi pao stitching and put it here, or like fake buttons, right? Then it becomes a lot more accessible. But I haven't really seen a lot of our local brands do that. And it's funny because if you really think about heritage, like you said, Singapore is so cosmopolitan, we're so fusion. Actually, we're in a very good position to be making these designs wearable because we are literally from very cultural, very heritage to modernized. But yet we're seeing the modern brands do it, and where are our local folks? Other than you guys, of course. You want to say something, Akila?
Yeah, I want to say that Singaporeans are actually very practical dressers, which is, it's amazing actually. We are very practical dressers. Like we want a certain material, it has to be cooling, it has to be able to stand the washing in the washing machine, Yeah, just wanted to share about it.
Yeah, but I think we do have that unique ability to actually fuse that together. As a consumer, that's where I see the next level of Singapore fashion go. Because when I look at some brands, they're either very westernized, so it feels like you could slap on an American or European label, and it feels like it's just another line. Whereas there are some like yours which are a bit more, it is made for like the Singaporean woman, the Singaporean heritage group, and you can recognize. But there's not a lot of these. Lily, what is your hope for the scene as you cultivate and work with brand owners like Gillian and Akila to further Singapore fashion?
I think the most important thing in terms of like how do we kind of like grow the brand more, impact more, is really just understand the community of which they are already accessing, So trying to hit everyone is impossible. It's even for us as a store, the type of audience that we have is very diverse. We 30 to 40% of our audience are tourists, and when they come into the store, they know very little about batik. They know very little about all that, but they come in, they get educated, and it could be the first touch point of which they've met batik-driven brand. And what Akila's brand does very well is that because it's very modern, everyday silhouettes, you provide that versatility. And same goes for Olive Basics as well with Jillian's brand, is that for the pregnant mom who, the needs of the moms these days are about versatility, right? You don't want to just wear a empire dress all day long after pregnancy. You want to be able to style onwards, and create more looks with that. So I think as a retailer, what we hope that our brand owners can do is really just listen to the voice of their audience, so understanding that it's perfectly okay to not try to hit so many marks, to try and hit such a wide audience, but cater to the audience that's already there and ready for them. And then lean on us as retailers and us being the curators of, for example, a multi-label store, and understanding that with different brands having such specific needs and offerings, we can cater to that broader audience for that. So I think it's about that kind of partnership. So it's important when a brand owner decides on a retail partner, whether online, offline, local, or overseas, is what can they bring to the table? Can I tap on a new audience via them without having to kind of change my direction as a business owner so much? Yeah. And I think with that, you maintain your brand's integrity, you maintain your own, overheads and needs and expenses, and the story of your brand's a lot stronger. Yeah, that's what I feel.
Okay, and because we are at FL Asia, so I have to ask this. I know it's still early days, but do you guys believe that in the next 5 or 10 years, hopefully, for Singapore brands, fashion brands, do you think we'll be at the stage where we'll be able to license and franchise it to other markets?
I would like to think so. If not, then we shouldn't be sitting here already. Yeah, but I think if we work as, in collaboration, right? And for it takes a lot for the brand to grow. It takes customers, it takes retailers, it takes even collaboration between brands. Sometimes not as public as this, but even in closed doors where we're exchanging ideas, or even maybe crying to one another and saying, how are we gonna, make business for the next month? But I think that if more knowledge is being shared, of businesses that have gone further than some of us, it helps us to prepare the way and not make maybe as many mistakes, but actually to refine that journey so that we can get there faster, and I think that can only be done if we see ourselves together.
Akila, what do you hope can be done so that that vision can eventually be achieved?
I think that as a solopreneur, so sometimes I am in my own head a lot, right? So that's the one to bounce ideas with, and that's where actually it's very important to be part of community like Design Orchard. So I find this is my personal finding as an owner. Design Orchard really helps me take risks. Yeah, you push me to take risks, right? Or to put myself out there a little more, right? Or to think about internationalization, for example. That's what Singapore Fashion Council, provide emailers for us to think about. You may not be able to participate immediately, but it's an idea that takes seed, right? And then, when you're a part of community, you talk to each other, talk to other brand owners, and then you ideate, and hopefully at some point we will be able to franchise or license. I can see it because Studio Gypsy's batik designs are our own. So the designs belong to us. I can see it happening, but it's about the how. So we are still doing the work to get there.
And it's important that brands like you guys survive. So otherwise, at the next generation, the cultural heritage will all just be gone, right? It's not really being imparted. So I love how you guys are trying to make it wearable, functional, and something that they can keep showcasing and reusing. That longevity also is very important, I think, with the current era of fast fashion. We're honestly generating so much waste, but when we slow down and really think about deliberate fashion, I'm a huge advocate of things that you can rewear over and over and over again.
So with Singapore Fashion Council, sustainability is one of our key pillars, right? But as a retailer, you want people to shop. So Doors is still a commercial entity. So the fun part about the day-to-day is how do we kind of balance that, so, and what the ladies had said is so important, because community building for entrepreneurs is so important, and a lot of the brand owners that we see are solo entrepreneurs, so they don't have the luxury of a big team. They could be the designer, the operations manager, the social media person posting at the same time very early in their journey. And as they discover that, hey, if I can lean on more people to support me with that, or how can I make more connections with other people who are in the same situation as them, and who either are in there right now with them or who have passed that stage to learn from. I think that's very important, so that's something that's very important. And as Singapore Fashion Council, it's idealistic to think that we're already there in terms of the support, getting feedback from the brand owners on what they truly need is very important. To scale overseas, to be in a franchise environment or be ready for franchise would take a lot. And it's not without their support or how vocal they are into what they need right now to get there, and that's how, as a council, we can grow and make sure that any programs that we develop or any courses that we have would directly benefit them. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing. So if you guys are in town, you can always pop by Design Orchard to check out these different brands. Or if not, Julian and Akila, where can they find more information about your brands?
We have our own online store on studiogypsy.com. You can also find us on Instagram at studio.gypsy.
And Jillian?
And for Olive Basics, we actually have a studio. So we go by appointment only, and we are open for the weekdays. We have doors, and also largely we also serve people online through our e-commerce store. And one thing about us is that we are very heavy on customer conversations. So a lot of times when we serve women on our e-commerce store, we always encourage them to reach out to us and direct message us on Instagram a lot, because we deal a lot with sizing, even like which styles we should recommend. Because I think back to sustainability and what Lily said, we really want them to own those pieces, because the more, if you are happy with the piece that you have, you're going to wear it more, right? And then that's great for us. It's also great for you. So yeah, I think online is a great way to shop, but always it's good to be in connection with us so that we can recommend the best pieces suitable for your lifestyle.
If there are any other brands that you would like us to feature, let us know in the comments. If not, thank you for tuning in for our panel. Please do check out these local brands, and perhaps one day we might see our Singapore fashion brands on the international stage. Thank you. This is Dawn, and we're tuning in day 2. We'll see you again tomorrow on day 3. Bye.
Bye.